Public Speaking Project presents Selecting and Arranging Main Points by Julie Schmutz and Lisa Schreiber, Ph.D. Voice talent by Jill Sabarbaro, with Morgan Hartrampt as the Media Production Specialist. You decide to attend a presentation on energy conservation at the community center because you would like to know how to make your home more energy efficient. When the presentation begins, the speaker jumps right into the topic without any sort of introduction. He bounces back and forth between why energy conservation is important and the money you can save per year. Every once in a while, the speaker mentions a few changes you can make to your household that will conserve energy. You find that you cannot identify the main points of this speech, and you are unable to follow along with the speaker's ideas. You probably had some trouble understanding this speaker because he failed to properly select and arrange his main points. It is critical that a speaker think carefully about how to present the ideas in his speech. If he just presents the information randomly, not only will the audience not understand him, they also will not remember what he has said. In this module, we will not have time to cover everything about selecting and arranging your main points. For more information, check out the chapter called Organizing and Outlining in our free online textbook, Public Speaking, the Virtual Text, at www.publicspeakingproject.org. The purpose of this module is to explain the basics of choosing main points and arranging them in a way that is clear and understandable. First, we will focus on 6 strategies you can use to effectively select your main points. After we talk about how to select your main points, we will discuss 4 common patterns for arranging the main points of your speech. The first tip to keep in mind when selecting your main points is that it is important to keep them relevant to your specific purpose and your thesis. A specific purpose is what you want the audience to learn from your speech. The specific purpose statement begins with the phrase, "At the end of my speech, my audience will be able to." The specific purpose is only seen by the speaker, and it serves as the overall goal of the speech. For instance, a specific purpose statement may say, "At the end of my speech, my audience will be able to identify the primary difference between butterflies and moths." Your thesis statement is a 1-sentence summary that comes at the end of your introduction and previews the main points of your speech for your audience. Put another way, the thesis provides a roadmap for your audience to follow as you explain the ideas of your speech. Using the specific purpose statement about butterflies and moths we just mentioned, a thesis statement may sound like this. The primary differences between moths and butterflies can be seen in the way they gestate, their body shapes, and the way they look when they are at rest. Let's say your specific purpose is, "By the end of my speech, my audience will know what to expect when getting a tattoo." You begin to make a list of main points, and you come up with 6. History of tattoos. How tattoo ink is manufactured. What cost to expect. How to become a tattoo artist. What to do to prepare. How to ensure proper healing. While all of these points have something to do with tattoos, not all of them directly relate to the specific purpose. Since your specific purpose is to prepare your audience for getting a tattoo, points 3, 5, and 6 would be most appropriate for your speech. The second thing to remember when selecting your main points is that it's important to keep the number of points low, usually between 3 and 5. If you add too many points, the audience will have trouble remembering your information. If you feel you need more than 5 points to fully inform your audience, you may want to think about changing the goal of your speech. Adjusting the specific purpose may help you narrow down your most important points. One way to keep the number of points low is to see if 2 points are similar to each other. In this case, you can make one point a supporting idea of the other. For instance, you may choose to give a speech on reasons to become a vegetarian. Your main points include: acquire a healthy lifestyle, become more environmentally conscious, learn to advocate for the humane treatment of animals, and spend less on groceries per month. The humane treatment of animals could actually be categorized under becoming environmentally conscious. By doing this, your 4 main points are simplified to 3. The third thing to remember when selecting main points is that they should be mutually exclusive. This means that there is only one idea contained in each point, and that they do not overlap. For example, if you're giving a speech about how to take care of your car, you would not want one of your main points to be changing your oil and maintaining proper brake fluid. To make sure your points are clear and fully explained, you could make this into two separate points: changing your oil and maintaining proper brake fluid. You also wouldn't want your points to be changing your oil, maintaining proper brake fluid, checking your tires, and maintaining proper air pressure in your tires. Logically, these last 2 points fit together into one. The fourth thing to remember is that your main points should be relevant to your audience. Consider who will be in your audience, and choose points that will make them want to listen to you. Imagine you are giving a speech on why the school board for the local high school should not cut extracurricular activities. You know the audience will be mostly composed of parents of football and soccer players. It probably would not be wise to use your time talking about the drama club or the music department. The fifth thing to remember is that your main points should also always be in parallel form. This means that they all agree grammatically. For example, if you were giving a speech about snorkeling, you would not want to say, in order to have the best snorkeling experience possible, you should know how to select your gear, selecting a snorkeling site, and make sure you snorkel safely. Instead, you might say, in order to have the best snorkeling experience possible, you should know how to select the right snorkeling gear, how to select the right site, and how to snorkel safely. Finally, when selecting your main points, make sure you can present an equal amount of information for each point. If your first point takes up 5 of your 7 minutes of speaking time, your audience will be confused. They may think that they missed something, or the points that came at the end are a lot less important. Now that you know how to select your main points, it is just as important to arrange them properly. The arrangement can make your speech seem organized, with a clear and understandable message. However, if done poorly, it can make your speech seem messy and confusing. There are several different types of organization methods to choose from, each best for a specific type of speech. In order for the audience to follow your ideas, the trick is selecting the pattern that is most appropriate for the kind of speech you are giving. The first type of pattern we're going to talk about is the chronological pattern of arrangement, also known as the temporal pattern. This pattern arranges events as they happen in time. Let's say you are giving a speech about the Olympics. You wouldn't order your points as the end of the ancient Olympic Games, Olympics of today, the origins of the Olympics, and revival of the Olympic Games in the 1800s. This would be difficult for the audience to follow, and it's not the natural, logical order of things. Instead, you would want to list your points in chronological order, going from the farthest back in time to most recent. The origins of the Olympics, the end of the ancient Olympic Games, revival of the Olympic Games in the 1800s, and the Olympics of today. The second type we're going to talk about is the spatial pattern of arrangement. This pattern has to do with arranging things in physical proximity to each other, or in geographic space. In this pattern, you could list things from closest to farthest away, from top to bottom, from inside out, from east to west, and so on. For instance, say you were giving a speech on what people would find if they visited your college campus. If you were to organize your points without considering their special arrangement, your speech would become confusing. For example, after the dining hall, turn around and continue to the Student Memorial Center. When you leave Memorial Center, the last place to see is the tennis court. From the Student Memorial Center, turn around and drive past the dining hall until you arrive at the courts. This is not logical, and the audience will have trouble identifying the important points of the speech. Like the other parts of your speech, your main points should be listed in a way that is clear and concise. Your points should be listed in the order that you encounter each location. The first building you will see when you drive onto campus is the Student Memorial Center. If you continue driving, the second building you will encounter is the dining hall. Finally, you will arrive at the tennis courts. This is a much more logical arrangement, and it will be easier for the audience to follow. The third type of pattern is the problem-solution pattern. From the name, you can probably tell that this type of arrangement is best when your speech is on a specific problem and its possible solutions. For this pattern, you want to list the problems and its parts as your first points. Logically, the solutions should come at the end. For a speech on the rising prices of textbooks, your points would be listed as price of textbooks now compared to 10 years ago, effects of these skyrocketing textbook prices, solutions students have tried on their own, solution requiring cooperation from students and the university. The fourth type of organization is the topical pattern. This can also be referred to as the categorical pattern. This is the most flexible type of pattern. It allows you to arrange your points in the order you feel is most important. There are three kinds of topical patterns. The first topical pattern involves the primacy effect. The primacy effect is when you list your most important point first. This technique is best when you have a topic that is probably new to your audience, or when you know your speech is controversial and might not be well received. For example, you might give a speech on the death penalty. Since you know there will be people in the audience who disagree with your stance, you should list your most persuasive point first. This will help them better adjust to listening to your other arguments, instead of shutting you out because they don't agree. The second topical pattern involves the recency effect. The recency effect has to do with the idea that the audience remembers the end of the speech the best. Because of this, you may want to list your most persuasive arguments last. Say you were giving a speech on which presidential candidate to vote for. If you wanted your audience to vote for a specific candidate, you would list that person last. Because of the recency effect, your audience will remember the details about that candidate the best when they go to the polls to vote. The third topical pattern involves complexity. An arrangement involving complexity would list your points from most simple to most detailed. Perhaps you decide to give a speech on foods to serve at a party. Your main points include chips and salsa, a 7-layer dip with a side of toasted pita bread, and French onion dip from a boxed mix. In this case, the chips and salsa are the least complicated, since the only instructions are to open the bag of chips and the jar of salsa. Because it's the simplest, it comes first. The French onion dip requires a little more presentation, since you need to mix the dip yourself. This would come second. Lastly is the 7-layer dip and toasted pita bread. This will most likely require extensive instruction and preparation, and therefore the most complex. This will come last. So, let's review. When selecting your main points, remember to keep these 6 tips in mind. 1. Make sure they are relevant to your thesis and specific purpose. 2. Be sure there are between 3 and 5 points. 3. Make sure those points are mutually exclusive. 4. Make sure they are relevant to your audience. 5. Be sure to state the points in parallel form. 6. Present an equal amount of information for each point. When arranging your main points, choose from one of the 4 organizational patterns. First, use the chronological pattern if your speech has to do with events in time. Second, use the spatial pattern if your speech involves physical proximity. Third, use the problem-solution pattern when your speech is about a specific problem and its possible solutions. Fourth, use one of the topical patterns if your main points fall into 3 separate categories. If you decide to list your most important topic first, this is the primacy effect. If you decide to put your most persuasive argument last, you are using the recency effect. If you list your topics from simplest to most confusing, you are arranging them according to complexity. An effective speech does not just present information to the audience. It presents information in a logical, understandable way. Selecting and organizing your main points is crucial to delivering a speech that the audience can follow with ease. Thank you for visiting the Public Speaking Project's virtual classroom. To view other modules about speech writing, go to www.publicspeakingproject.org.